Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. And for this episode, we're kicking off a little thing we like to call Spooktober, where we're going to try to focus on the scarier aspects of the world, pop culture, entertainment. We today we're doing a bit of folklore, but in the coming weeks we're going to feature a couple episodes on our top 10 favorite scary games, scary movies. We've got a lot kind of coming up in the pipe. So all horror themed. So if that tickles your fancy, be sure to tune in for the rest of the episodes this month. But before we kick off everything, we usually kind of do a little retrospective of what we've all been up to lately. So I guess I'll kick things off. Where in preparing for some of the upcoming topics we're going to talk about, I have been revisiting some movies in my collection. I've been digging through my Steam library to see if there's any hidden gem horror games that I haven't touched yet that might work their way into my list. So I've been doing a lot of research, but it's been fun research. So that's kind of been occupying a lot of my free time. I've been doing a lot of reading of horror novels and things too, to get into the spirit of things. So yeah, just really diving full into the whole Halloween, Spooktober kind of atmosphere. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I'm the host, Justin. Joining us today are Cody and Brett. What have you two been up to?
Well, this is Cody. I've been spending most of my time prepping my annual Halloween party. So that's really taken a vast majority of my time. But in addition to that, I did finally get around to watching a TV show called Manifest that I started the premiere episode of like maybe a month ago, and finally watched episodes 2 and 3 recently. Interesting concept to the show if you're not familiar with it. I think they tried to like recapture the lost magic essentially, but there's a plane flight that basically lands like normal from the passenger and pilot's perspective, but from everyone else on Earth's perspective reappears 5 years after it took off. And so it's kind of like the blip from Marvel almost in a way. But so it's this story about these 20 people who were on the plane because they had got bumped because the flight was oversold. And so they were on this little bonus flight and some families got split up. And so it's like, so far, I watched the first one and I was like, this is interesting. I don't know where it's going to go from here, though. The beginning of the second episode, no spoiler here, really, but like the plane that they had ridden on explodes. And so I was like, well, that's not going to go some of the directions I thought it was going to go. So, but they're like hearing voices and like hearing music in their head, and it's like leading them to different places on the planet. And well, I shouldn't say on the planet, like around their neighborhood. And they're basically solving crimes and fixing wrongs in society by some voice that they're hearing. And they're not sure if it's like their relatives or if there's a singular voice that's talking to everyone that was on the flight, or exactly what's going on yet. It's not really clear. I don't know if that'll get cleared up later or not, but it's equally interesting from like that part, because that's the part I really wanted to hook me, was the like weird supernaturally side of it all. And it's been okay so far. On the other part, which really has drawn me in a little more than I thought it would, which is basically like, in the Marvel movies that happens, and then like they come back to, Ant-Man's like, oh, and my daughter's 5 years older and I'm back now. And this is very much like, no, like what really happens to like all those family dynamics, different family dynamics, when somebody disappears and then comes back. So like, one girl's fiance has moved on and married her best friend now because she was dead for 5 years. And like one of the main stars is like a boy who stayed the same age because he was on the flight, but now his twin sister is 5 years older. So like that's weird. And like it's got all kinds of cool dynamics like that. So I don't know if it's still going to hook me long term, but I'm going to try it a little bit more at least. So that's probably my most recent thing, other than keeping up on She-Hulk again, and then we are still up to date on Lego Masters and The Masked Singer. So I have fallen behind on the Rings of Power. I need to catch back up on that.
We enjoyed Manifest as well, and we're eagerly awaiting the final season coming out soon. So
Okay, that gives me hope.
It definitely does give like the Lost vibes and atmosphere. I agree with that as well.
Okay, well, if you guys have watched, was there 3 seasons? I think now.
There's 3, and the fourth one is coming out soon.
Okay, that gives
Like
me hope
within
if
a
you guys
few
stuck
months.
through it, though.
Yep.
What have you been up to?
Yeah. Well, just for fun, this week I started taking an antibiotic and some steroids and an inhaler. That's going real well for me. The doctor didn't say it in words, but kind of implied I might get superpowers from this. So I'm really crossing my fingers for that. I'm really hoping that this cough that I've had for 4 weeks, really hope it goes away soon. That's where this is going.
If you could have picked whatever superpower you wanted from that treatment, which one would it be?
Ooh, man, that's a great question. Probably like an invulnerability kind of thing, like a bulletproof kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you were invulnerable, but you still had to keep the cough?
Ooh.
Oh shit. That's a really damn tough choice. Okay. Well, I'll think about that later.
Okay.
In actual fun things, I've been playing through Elden Ring for 7 months since it was released, basically. And I just recently got to the final boss. So I've got like 75 hours into it or something. And I definitely have not done nearly as much content as was in the game. There's this game is massive. But it's been great. I'm happy. I'm at the point where I really enjoy it, but I kind of want it to just finish it so I can do something else. Because I haven't been playing any of my other games. But yeah. Other than that, I haven't really been we watched Love and Thunder the other day. That's the only thing. We haven't been watching new shows lately. We watched Love and Thunder, and we enjoyed it, but it was
that's the Hulk Hogan TV show. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
24-inch pythons.
They infected with rat cancer. All right.
Go
back to the last episode.
Yeah, Love and Thunder. It was kind of like borderline too slapstick for me. I was like, this is like a comedy. Where's the superhero stuff?
So it's Ghoulies 3.
Yeah. It was enjoyable, but it was just not quite what I was expecting it to be.
Okay.
Yeah. On the topic of medical, also tomorrow morning I have a flu shot and a COVID shot. So shout out to vaccines.
Woo!
There goes 10% of our audience.
Well, all right. So if we're done catching up, I suppose I should lead us into our actual topic for this evening. So we've done other folklore type of things, other cryptozoological sorts of topics on this channel, or on this podcast rather. So tonight we're going back to that and talking about the Jersey Devil, which
do you mean Chris Christie?
And there goes another 10% of our audience. But so Jersey Devil, one of the strangest cryptids, folkloric creatures out there. So did we maybe want to talk a little bit about how we first learned about this thing, our first exposure to the legend, or do we want to just kind of jump into what it is and where it came from and all that?
Well, I have to admit I didn't really know much about this before, so I did some research, and for what I got here, it sounds like the Jersey Devils. The first sighting was in 1974 in Kansas City. Some of the names associated with it include Brodeur, Niedermeyer, and Jager. eyewitnesses often report them as being tall, muscular, and usually having facial hair. And they're often seen wearing ice skates and carrying hockey sticks. I thought that was odd, but I just, the internet's always right. So
Yeah.
uh, but yes, as Brett implied, the story of the Jersey Devil is widespread enough, and at least notorious enough that New Jersey actually named their hockey team the Jersey Devils. So it is maybe not not as well known as, say, Bigfoot or Nessie, that sort of thing, but it has a certain amount of fame out there.
I confess I did not pick up that they were called the Devils because of that. Legitimately, there were like two things this week that I was like, oh, that was one of them. I don't remember what the other one was now, but there were definitely a couple times I was like, I'm an idiot. But sports teams are weird like that, though. Like, you just don't always question like why the Houston Astros are called the Astros or the San Francisco 49ers or the 49ers till you think about it, and then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Answer your earlier question, Justin. I'm sure I must have learned about this in some cryptozoology book that I picked up at a library once upon a time. Just I was always fascinated by these creatures that should maybe once upon a time do or did live out in the woods or the mountains or the whatevers. And I had mentioned I think maybe when we were together last week, we had talked about, we were playing Horrified, the board game, and mentioned that there was an American version of that. And while my kids were in music today, I basically spent the hour and a half walking. So I walked down to Barnes and Noble down through downtown, and they had a copy of it there. And I just happened to look on the back to see what their 6 monsters were that they included. And it was Bigfoot, of course, and the Mothman and the Jersey Devil. And who's there was a 4th one that I was like, those are the big 4. Oh, the Chupacabra. So the Chupacabra and Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil and the Mothman, I feel like, are the big 4. And then the other 2 I hadn't heard of, actually. It was like the Badlands Banshee and I don't remember what the other one was, like the New Orleans Swamp Monster or something. Like the other 2 I had not heard of. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Those are like the 6, like instead of like Champ from like Lake Champlain or something else, I would think. But anyway,
interesting.
So probably a while ago, I would guess.
Okay. My in going back over the past few days and doing some research to refresh my memory on this particular critter, a lot of it was sounding really familiar. Like I remember reading a story about this thing back when I was in like elementary school. It was the talk about hoof prints in the snow and disappearing after they went a certain distance and all that. It sounded really familiar to me. So I think my first introduction to the legend of this thing was when I was really young, and I just didn't consciously realize that until recently. So yeah, but I've always been interested and curious about cryptids and things that go bump in the night and all that. So I'm excited to jump into this one. So do we want to, I guess we should start at the beginning, the origins of where this creature was first reported, where it may have come from. So there is along the, you look like you're about to say something, Cody.
Well, I didn't know if you were leading into that or you wanted me to lead into that. Chris Christie had been the governor, but then he also ran for president. But Donald Trump steamrolled him. So are we back on the mythological Jersey Devil?
You see, his boiling rage made him sprout horns and a tail and terrorize the countryside.
No, that was the guy who won, actually. There goes the other 30%. Now we're done.
All right. Well, now that we can just say whatever.
Yeah.
So in the southern regions of New Jersey, there is an area called the Pine Barrens, and that's Barrens, not like barons as in lumber barons. But it's a gigantic forest, over 1 million square acres of just not untouched, but just forest land, undeveloped, very wild. And it is in this area that the first stories of the Jersey Devil originate. And depending on who you believe, it could be well, there are several stories, several prominent stories. They also seem to originate in 1735. So before America was, I mean, the United States was even the United States. It was either Mrs. Shroud of Leeds Point, New Jersey, who had 12 children, didn't want to have any more, but the 18th century being what the 18th century was, she ended up pregnant with her 13th child. And this story goes that she cursed it, she cursed her fate. She basically, hated her state so much that her child ended up being born malformed, and quickly started to change shape. Its arms turned into wings. It grew to the size of a man. And some stories say it killed her, it killed the husband, it killed the nursemaid. It either killed everyone or killed no one, pretty much, and then flew up the chimney and disappeared into the night. Or it was a Mrs. Leeds of Burlington, New Jersey, who was a Quaker, who studied witchcraft, which is not something Quakers normally do, who also birthed a normal boy who then transformed. His features began to elongate, his face became like a horse, he grew hooves, bat wings, grew to the size of a man, with clawed hands, a serpent's tail, deer legs, somewhat dragon-like, which is interesting because the Pine Barrens were referred to in very similar ways by two different groups of people. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciations of these, so I apologize, but the Lenape tribes of the region referred to the area as Popoessing, or the place of the dragon. And apparently Dutch explorers at one point referred to it as Drakakil, or Dragon's River. So the fact that a dragon-like creature ended up emerging from this area is interesting, as a footnote, if nothing else.
Or did they name it after the creature?
It is, from my understanding, based on what I read, the names predated the creature itself.
Well, we may not have accurate records from those ancient peoples.
It's possible, but I wanted to point that out because interesting footnotes. So It could be either of those things, or it was a Romani curse, or it was a girl from Leeds Point who was having an affair with a British soldier, or there's pretty much anyone you ask down in the area seems to have their own take on where the Jersey Devil came from. So
I'm curious, since they say it has a face like a horse, has anyone questioned Sarah Jessica Parker about ancestral origins? Maybe this is a route that no one has taken yet. I just wondering.
Not in my research. Though perhaps a worthwhile path to pursue.
Talk about sex in the Pine Barrens, am I right?
So these are varying accounts of where the creature came from. Generally, a woman who didn't want the child that she was about to give birth to cursed it and ended up embodying that curse that she put on it. Do we want to pause there or talk about any of these things, or should we talk about sightings in the years that followed?
I think it's just interesting tidbit is I think if not the first, one of the first written reports of it actually comes from Napoleon Bonaparte's brother, of all people. It's just I watched Monster Quest, something like that. It was like a show on the History Channel, something.
Okay.
I watched that in preparation, and that was one of the tidbits they had, was that Napoleon's brother actually had one of the first written reports of the Jersey Devil.
Joe Bonaparte. Actually, his name, Joseph Bonaparte.
Joe Bonaparte, yeah. No, I would just say it's, every one of these cryptos or folklores, legends, myths that you look at has, what you kind of already outlined, which is just no concrete story. It seems like it's all of this conglomeration of tales that have been passed down through generations, and it's just interesting to see how these things form, you know, and kind of makes me wonder too, like this one's almost 300 years old now, so it just makes me wonder, like in 300 years, like what kind of crazy stories they'll be making up about our time, you know.
Legend tells of a creature called the Kardashian that lives along the Jersey Shore.
Legend tells there was a ticket you could get to Hawaii, but it was hard to get.
Oh. But yeah, since Brett brought up Bonaparte's brother, I guess we can start there with accounts. So apparently Joseph Bonaparte was the king of Spain for a 5-year stretch, after which he moved to the US in that region, settled in an estate called Breeze Point near the Pine Barrens, where he lived for a couple of decades. He liked to hunt, and one day when he was hunting, he found tracks like a donkey's, except it seemed to only have 2 legs, which were like different size, so it suggested that whatever made it was malformed. And the tracks vanished at some random point in the woods, just like, went to a certain, to a point and then just gone. And as he was looking to try and figure out where they started again, he encountered a bat-winged, horse-headed, thin-legged creature that hissed at him and flew off before he could recover his composure enough to shoot it. So that is, as far as I could tell, was his only encounter with the Jersey Devil. Let's see. Unlike Stephen Decatur, who was a naval officer, so someone of fairly high renown, so someone who you wouldn't think would have a reason to make up a story like this for fame or attention or anything. So a naval officer in the early 1800s, he paid a visit to the Hanover Iron Works, which was in the area, and this place made cannonballs. So he was inspecting their stock, their product, to make sure it was okay. And as he was there, he saw a strange creature flying overhead, and being an American, what do? You shoot it.
Shoot it.
So he aimed one of the cannons, and according to his account, he hit it, but it just kind of kept on flying. Like it didn't even shrug it off. It just didn't notice that it was hit at all, and just kept on going on its merry way. So that's an account of someone actually directly interacting with it and shooting at it and not having any sort of effect, lending fuel to the fire that this is some sort of supernatural being that is beyond our understanding or ability to combat. Let's see. I don't want to hog all of the spotlight if sorry, Cody just changed his background, and yeah.
Sorry, I may have been a little distracted looking for a background of Chris Christie to put on here, so
it's all right. But
well, one thing I wanted to mention, and this is just I had heard this legend from a long time ago, and the Pine Barrens, to me, I had in my head kind of what they were. Like we have, well, you all know because you're both from Michigan, but there's areas particularly in like more the upper third of the glove of the lower peninsula of Michigan, where like I kind of always associated that look around maybe like Gaylord Drailing as to like what this place would kind of look like, with like pine trees all over the place and rows and stuff. Some of the stuff I was reading about this week also mentioned that it's more of a swampy area than maybe we have in Michigan there. But I guess this is like my geographic ignorance of the East Coast. Like I didn't really picture New Jersey until I thought about it as like having these types of areas, because it's more commonly presented in like, pop culture as like the urban armpit of like New York, where it's just kind of like crappy buildings and crappy neighborhoods. And then looking at the map here, it's like also basically Philadelphia's armpit as well, I see. So
yeah, it's right there.
I didn't really realize there were even parts in that little tiny state that would have an area like this once I really started to think about it.
Yeah, same. And it's interesting what sort of misconceptions we end up with just from lack of exposure, lack of research, and if nothing else, looking into this was kind of eye-opening, just to give a different perspective on a state that I'd never really paid much thought to until now. So to any of our listeners who might be from New Jersey, your state has a lot more to offer than I would have initially thought. My apologies for my initial impressions.
Wait, are you saying devils is more than you thought their state had to offer?
No, I'm talking about like the forests and
okay.
million plus acres of woodland. I
Like,
mean,
boy, you had a really low opinion of this place. You're like, well, at least they have devils.
We're in
I mean,
Delaware.
Yeah, Delaware.
Oh,
It's right there.
But yeah, other accounts are pretty scattered. For a good 50 years until after that point. Farmers having murdered livestock that were left in the fields with unidentified tracks around them. High-pitched screams heard in the night, that sort of thing. Until, and this is really the mother lode for Jersey Devil lore.
Give us the mother lode.
January of 1909,
Ooh.
where this thing went on a tear. For like a span of about a week, it was just all over the damn place. So January 16th, a man named, and I'm not making this up, Thack Cousins of Woodbury, New Jersey, saw it flying overhead with glowing red eyes. At the same day, some 26 miles away in Bristol, Pennsylvania, people saw the same thing. Cops opened fire at it, but no effect. Footprints were found in the snow. The next day, hoofprints were found outside the home of the Lodens family of Burlington, New Jersey, around their trash can. If they weren't hooves, I'd say just raccoons or something, but hooves.
Okay.
So others found tracks on rooftops, which it's a little past Christmas, so it's not Santa.
Krampus.
And when the hunters and whatnot tried to get dogs to follow the tracks, they refused to. So you've got the whole animal sensing evil connection there. A couple days later, a Mr. and Mrs. Evans of Gloucester, New Jersey, awakened to a scream, like a blood-curdling scream outside their house. When they went to a window to look, they saw a 3-foot figure, which is at odds with the original stories where it got to the size of a full-grown man, but everything else about it was the same. The standing on the roof of their shed, just like screaming, and then it flew off. The next day in Burlington, New Jersey, a hunting party saw the Jersey Devil fly towards the direction of a town called Boorstown, where it landed in a cemetery, and then it flew from there to Riverside. And the last part I saw about that day was there were hoof prints found around a dead puppy, which is an odd little detail. But next day, so January 21st, a trolley in Clementon was circled by the devil for what it sounded like an extended period of time. It was also seen by something called the Black Hawk Social Club. I wasn't really 100% sure what that was. And apparently a fireman in Collingswood saw it on the ground and managed to chase it off with his hose.
His hose?
Yeah, he like sprayed water at it and it flew off. Hopefully,
I thought he was a pimp.
Devil better have my money. Same day, so the 21st, a Mrs. Sorbinski of Camden, New Jersey, woke to find the Jersey Devil trying to eat her dog. Wow. She grabbed a broom and just started beating at it until it flew away. Apparently, she drew a crowd during this, so other people supposedly witnessed this happening. And then the culmination of the story for a good almost 50 years happened in February, where a railroad worker, it didn't specify exactly where, saw the Jersey Devil fly into wires and explode. And apparently the explosion was violent and hot enough that it melted the tracks below where it blew up.
It melted the train tracks?
According to reports. I mean, granted, this was in 1909, so maybe? Probably not, but
seems a bit dubious, but
it does. So that's all anyone seemed to hear about this thing until 1957.
Dun dun dun.
where the New Jersey Department of Conservation found an odd corpse in the Pine Barrens, which they described as having animal bones, feathers, and long spindly hind legs that were all burnt. So just in the middle of the
Ooh.
woods. So leading to the idea that maybe this thing survived the initial explosion and, you know, managed to coast into the forest where it died and stayed
30
there
years
for
later.
nearly, yeah. And that's after that, no real solid accounts until 1987, when a woman in Vineland found her German Shepherd torn apart about 25 feet from the end of its chain, with hoof prints around its body. So that's the last quote unquote verified account of someone seeing evidence of the Jersey Devil.
That was in what year, the last one?
1987.
Hmm.
I
How old is-
was not able to. What was that?
How old is Chris Christie? I'm joking. No, so no one's claimed to have seen him in the last whatever many years, 25, 35 years.
Nope, at least nothing that I was able to find that had any sort of corroboration or verification online. So, so that's
yeah.
Oh, go on.
I was just thinking there was one like eyewitness report that I had written down here, but I didn't write down a date, so I don't know when that occurred. I feel like it was more recent than that, but
Okay.
yeah. Anyways,
Well, go for it.
I find it interesting. One of the things that I found, and I was reading some stuff, is a lot of these reports about this are from groups of people rather than like individuals. You know, and that I find that really interesting. I'm not sure what that means pertaining to it, but it's very easy to write off like some Yahoo in the woods saying like, oh my God, I saw this thing and it was just crazy. And
I seen it with my eyes.
when you got, you know, multiple people all seeing things at a certain, you know, at one event, it does make it, you know, obviously gives it more credence for being possible. And yeah, it's just an interesting deal there. The other thing I wrote down here was a lot of these reports are, at least some of the more recent ones, are actually more like hearings rather than sightings. You know, there's lots of reports of people, you know, hearing just like a screeching, like this otherworldly sound in the woods, but not actually seeing anything. And they're like, well, that does not sound like anything I've ever heard. And so, well, it must be this Jersey Devil. But yeah, I mean, it seems to be pretty common in that area for whatever reason.
So one of the knocks I have against this one a little bit here, and we can talk about ratings and stuff at the end here, but one of the things that's interesting about this one is, unlike like Bigfoot, for example, there's 1,000 different variations of people describing Bigfoot, but it's still basically Bigfoot. And with this one, I feel like the description of this thing has really morphed and changed through different eyewitness reports, or even through time, which I'm intrigued by, because if you look online, if anybody that's listening here hasn't seen what this supposedly looks like before, the like most common, I think, famous drawing of this thing is kind of like it's got these spindly little legs with hooves at the bottom. It has kind of like giant bat wings with the body of like some kind of mammal, and then its neck and head are almost more like a, I don't even know what you describe this as, like a camel or a horse, I guess, kind of in the head. But if you look at the old drawing of it, and this is, I think, really the most famous one here, it's creepy, yes, but it's not really that imposing of like a cryptid. Like, I could see how if that thing came up, like maybe the lady with her broom did scare this thing away based on how it looked there. But if you look at like some of the more recent depictions of it, even including that board game I was talking about, like it's more like it has like antlers and horns coming off its head, and like it's kind of morphed into like this more terrorizing looking creature, which I was also kind of curious about when you were both just talking, because if this is a myth that originated in like the 1730s, you
Mhm.
know, what to them was like a scary image, probably, you know, like if this thing came up on our lawn today with this original drawing here, like uneasiness, yes, sure, but like my son might hit this thing with a baseball bat the way it looks in this picture. But if like the more recent versions of what people have described came on our lawn, you know, like it'd be like, get in the house, lock the door, let's, you know. So it's interesting that like the visual of this has morphed as people have gone on to be more accustomed to scary things in their lives. I think like scary visual images of things, this kind of morphed along with that. So I guess what I'm getting at here is I don't know if this is such a weirdly hotbed area in New Jersey that they have a lot of different things that have a slightly similar but different appearance, or if this is just like the legend has been updated over the years to fit our current culture. You know, because like Nessie is still the same as she's always been, Bigfoot's the same as he's always been, but like this one seems to be updated a little bit more based on time.
Okay.
Seems fair. Yeah.
Well, I actually have a couple of counterpoints to things that you both brought up. So first, regarding the crowds,
Challenge.
crowds of people seeing it. So I guarantee if I were, just on the streets in a crowd of people and I yelled, "He's got a gun," just like pointing at a random person, some of the people around me, after the fact, after the dust had settled and whatnot, they would, I guarantee they would claim they saw a weapon in the person's hand that I pointed to. The power of suggestion is a really strong thing. So it's not just because you have multiple people saying, "Oh yeah, there was totally, this thing that flew over the trees," doesn't necessarily mean they all saw what they thought they saw. So there's that. And the other counterpoint is the bigger one, and I'm about to blow your mind. So
Stop.
so the funny thing is, prior to 1909, when all that craziness was happening, it wasn't even known as the Jersey Devil. It was known as the Leeds Devil. And there's a story here. So this harkens back to the 1800s or the 18th century, back when the story first came about, to a man named Daniel Leeds, who was an Englishman who moved to the US, to this area, and settled in a Quaker community called Burlington. Now, he made a bit of a name for himself, and not for the right reasons, because Daniel Leeds was known for publishing almanacs, basically like predictions of the weather, how crops were going to be, all that jazz. But the thing is, his almanacs included mysticism, things like astrology and, spiritualism, that sort of thing. And Quakers, being very, stringent in their beliefs, being very, steadfast and unbudging, they didn't really like this. So he ended up with kind of a less than stellar reputation in the community where he decided to live. And not just for that, but he was also, since he was from England, he was, when the Revolutionary War broke out, he was an English sympathizer. So he was a Tory, and that didn't win him any favors either. But the bigger enemy he made, not just or outside of his community, was one Ben Franklin, who you may also have known was famous for, well, many things, but including Poor Richard's Almanac.
I was going to make a joke about that, so that's interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the story here goes that Franklin didn't like having Mr. Leeds as competition. So he tried to badmouth him and discredit him as much as he could. The guy already had a terrible reputation among his community. So what's a little bit more, how much of more of a step is it to say that, oh, well, his wife just gave birth to the literal devil? So the theory here goes that this was something that Franklin made up to try and eliminate his competition, to get his readers to stop reading David Leeds's almanac and start reading Poor Richard's Almanac, because he didn't like the competition. He didn't like the guy himself. And further, credence to this is that the feud didn't, or the feud started in 1733, 2 years before the supposed birth of the Jersey Devil. So it had been going on for a while, and perhaps with the birth of a 13th child, 13th being an unlucky number, Franklin saw his chance to really rub this, Mr. Leeds' face in the mud. Furthermore, his Leeds' son later took over the publishing of the almanac, from what I understand, and at one point decided to include the Leeds family crest on the cover of a few volumes before it stopped printing. Their family crest included a wyvern, which is a two-legged, winged, somewhat dragon-like creature. So it's doesn't really seem much of a stretch that.
And that was
Franklin
before this legend came out?
So it doesn't seem like much of a stretch for Franklin, being the opportunist that he was, to just wrap all this into a story that he then sold wholesale to the public and just used it to, sling mud at his competitor.
Is there documentation of Ben Franklin talking about this?
I do believe so. If you look for, let's see, do a search online here for Ben Franklin Jersey Devil, the legend of the Jersey Devil and its connection to Ben Franklin, the Jersey Devil, the real story, from Skeptical Inquirer, Jersey Devil, the legendary demon, that haunts New Jersey, the Jersey Devil and how Ben Franklin used it as a fear campaign. So there are multiple sources that cite this as being an element to the whole legend.
I mean, that's interesting.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely not something I've heard before.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. I hadn't known about this until a few days ago when I really started digging into it. And then when I latched onto this branch of the story, it's just like, holy crap, this is way more comprehensive than I would have expected. And,
that is interesting.
And being that the main sightings didn't start until 1909, over a century later, no one remembered Daniel Leeds at that point. So whatever was seen then, didn't have any connection to the Leeds name. So, people just started calling it based on the region it was found, the Jersey Devil.
I mean, I guess going back to what I said earlier about the variances in the reporting of what this thing looks like, I mean, you could very conceivably be talking about two different things here too, then.
Potentially.
There could be the legend of the Leeds baby that may or may not have been perpetrated by Franklin, and then you could have something else that popped up here 170 years later, 1909.
Yeah,
what I'm getting out of this is that Ben Franklin may have been a warlock. Conjured this beast into existence.
All we know is that he liked electricity and keys and kites, and that he enjoyed larger women. But that last fact I just learned from Assassin's Creed 3 when I was walking through Boston with him. So I don't know if that's historically accurate or not. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that part either.
But he will go on in detail about why he prefers such. But anyway, odd coding for the game. But anyway, I mean, that's a really interesting connection with the Jersey Devil here.
Yeah, so, I guess I'm just wondering, like, let's just say that the way it started, the story started was through this kind of like rubbing his opponent into the dirt kind of thing. Well, I guess maybe just like Cody touched on it, like maybe it's two different things. Like, just if he just made this up, then why are all these sightings continuing through history? But if it's two completely different things, then that could explain it simple enough.
True.
It is a weird one too, because like Loch Ness and Bigfoot, to go back to those for a second, like generally aren't attributed to like mutilations or killings or things like that. So like, to say, is New Jersey getting publicity and tourism off this? I mean, possibly some, but it sounds like a lot of the acts this has been associated with have been like pretty bad things, like not necessarily positive publicity here. My puppy died.
It's funny because they actually have like Jersey Devil, like historical info on the official federal website for New Jersey. So they're like totally leading into this thing as a come and see our state kind of thing.
Yeah,
Come to New
that's-
Jersey, you see the site of the dead dog.
Aww. Yeah, I was one of the sites I was on had this described as a prehistoric creature, which people compared to like the pterodon, basically some sort of flying bat-like reptile from the dinosaur age. Another place had it listed as a carnivorous marsupial, very specific, like it's a marsupial clearly. And then the more recent ones here, and I've heard this before a lot too, was the sandhill crane theory, which is just like a giant bird that has some similar body shape characteristics to what is often reported as the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, long, thin legs, big wings.
Yeah.
About
Yeah,
3.5 feet tall, give or take. Yeah.
The head certainly wouldn't match up, but the rest of it could be,
Yeah.
you know, in like
Yeah.
a nighttime situation could be seen that way, I suppose.
Yeah. Huh, interesting. I hadn't heard that particular theory, but
That's kind of one of the more recent accepted explanations, I think, for that. But I was just looking at like even like this horsehead bat or the hammerhead bat, like those are huge too. Like where do those live at? Are those
Africa.
even, are those
Yeah,
even in the
that
West at all?
was a part of the thing in the thing I watched, and they actually do look strikingly similar to the depictions of the Jersey Devil. But like one of the things they stated in the thing I watched was, you know, these bats are used to like 80-degree temperatures, and they wouldn't survive a New Jersey winter. You know, so for this thing to like be living you know, in the area for, you know, for a couple hundred years, highly unlikely. But if you look at a photo of these hammerhead bats from Africa, they actually do look
That looks
reasonably
really
like
similar.
like the similar. Yeah,
it's like someone stuck a moose's head onto a bat's body or something.
pretty
These-
much.
yeah, these things are terrifying, man. If I saw one of those, I would crap my pants. Well, I mean, Brett, you just mentioned another interesting fact in there, which is, you know, speculation with like Bigfoot. We talked about in that episode, even, which was if there is a Bigfoot, like there has to be enough of a population that's kept them alive all these years. And like, we don't have many creatures in the world that live 250 years. If we're saying this is a, you know, Jersey Devil that's been around for that long, that kind of defies the logics of the animal kingdom as well.
Yeah, I haven't. The things that I've looked up on this, I would say more people probably lean towards it being like a singular creature that's lived this entire time, rather than like a breed of creature that is, you know, continues, you know, on through offspring.
So
Yeah, you got some more stuff there, Justin?
no, that's about all the details I've got.
I got a few more here. I just thought were interesting about this particular legend. So one of the things that struck me the second thing I wrote down actually on this topic was 1938, the state of New Jersey officially gave the Jersey Devil its state demon designation, which I didn't know was a real thing. I mean, I guess you can make up whatever you want, but it made me kind of curious to look up if other states have a state demon, like what they are. That's kind of interesting.
I'm doing that right now.
I wrote down just to again talk about how prevalent this legend was in its main sighting day. We had $100,000 reward at one point that was offered for this dead or alive, which I think they said the reward is still active on the site I was on too. Like no one's ever tried to claim it, but the actual reward is still actually out there. You can claim it if someone could produce proof of this creature. At least 50 different towns have had a sighting of this. So this is not just a middle of the woods, you know, middle of nowhere type creature. It's been seen in towns over time. And 1973, the Vietnam War servicemen designated the Jersey Devil as an anti-war symbol officially for the Vietnam War. I don't know what connection that has to do with anything, without doing some more research on that, but that was kind of interesting. And I'm sorry, that was just Vietnam War that does not have a year. The 1973 is when he gained nationwide attention when a movie was made called The Legend of Boggy Hollow, which apparently featured the Jersey Devil. And in 1996, Berlin-based Cosmic Comics, Justin.
Okay.
Cosmic Comics out of Berlin created a character called JD, based on the Jersey Devil, who both protects the environment and also searches for truth.
Oh, man.
So there's that as well. And what he found, you wouldn't believe.
He's the hero we deserve.
It's true. A couple other movies have been made about the Jersey Devil and also has been featured in video games, such as a more recent game, Wolf Among Us, which has had the Jersey Devil in it. I have not played that, but I did see that in the notes here.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's really about what I have on this one too. But
One question that came up to me while I was looking at stuff, and I didn't get an answer for it, is are there any human deaths associated with the Jersey Devil? Because I couldn't find any. There's like a ton of sightings and reports, and like some animal deaths, but I couldn't find anything on a human death associated with the Jersey Devil.
Unless you follow the story where it killed a person or multiple people right after it was born. That's the only record I've been able to find about human deaths attributed to it.
oh yeah, when he came out and supposedly killed the family or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's the only indication I've seen at all in any of the research I've done that it may have killed or even injured a person.
Yeah, it's a good point. This is another
Yeah.
one that's just a friendly devil.
Just eating your dog.
Keep your livestock away. Yeah, it's
Hide your cows.
well, it is.
So-
Yeah, it is just again kind of like shows my ignorance of geography. Like I just wouldn't think of New Jersey as like having a woodland-based mythological cryptozoology case here that
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. Like Wyoming, I buy, but New Jersey, that's weird.
Yeah, like New Jersey, at least the one thing I heard, I was still true today, but they apparently at one point were like the most densely populated state, in the United States. And yet still have this massive forest in the middle of the state. That's kind of just an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting to start looking at geography here because I was looking at that map of New Jersey and I just saw like Delaware off to the side. And I was like, I know Delaware is like one of the smallest population places, but like, look at Google Maps for Delaware. Like, the whole place is a one big forest. Like, it's nuts. Like,
Neat.
who knows what's there? I don't know. Could be anything.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Sounds like we're kind of winding up or winding down on this one. Did we want to give a like a rating for the Jersey Devil? Like,
Yeah, let's do it, man.
0 to 10, like how likely it is that it's a real thing, or
Yeah, I think this is important how you word this one. Do you want to do like it's a real thing, or like was a real thing, or like I don't know. I don't know how you want to you choose.
Okay, so let's say 0 to 10 was the Jersey Devil a real creature that existed?
You dog you. Was.
Well, because I mean, if it is supernatural, then there's the chance it could have an extended lifespan. But did it ever exist as a literal thing, or is it just a story? 0 to 10.
Now, to be clear, before I answer this, are you saying that this is something that is outside the realm of like the normal animal kingdom? As opposed to like if I say this is a bird, then yes, it existed. But
okay,
are you asking if it's something other than that?
Yes. Is it its own creature? Is it its its own distinct species or individual, or something that's not just a sandhill crane or a turkey vulture or something like that? Is it its own entity? Is / was?
That is a tough one.
Yeah, I feel like there's less evidence for this one than some of the other things that we that we have for cryptids. Just for example, like we talked about Bigfoot previously, and I feel like there's far more evidence for Bigfoot in as far as like footprints and like hair samples and things like that. Not say that that actually was like an actual thing, but
right.
it could just been fabricated is what I'm getting at. But at least there's like some evidence, so just kind of say that this thing is real. And other than eyewitness reports and like people saying that they've seen like footprints from it, I searched specifically like evidence for New Jersey Devil, and I really didn't find anything. Not that I searched, I didn't put a ton of time into it, researching stuff, but didn't really find anything other than just eyewitness reports of this thing. So it's really hard for me to put a number to it. Even though there's lots of reports on it, there's probably, I guess I would say that there's like more reports of this thing being real than perhaps other cryptids, but there's less evidence for it also. I don't know. That's kind of just the feeling that I'm getting from it. As far as a number, whether it's an actual thing, I haven't. I'm just putting this number in my head right now. I hadn't thought this previously, but maybe like I kind of lean towards like a low, like middle, lower, like 4. Let's just put 4 on it.
Okay. I guess I'll go next. So, like Brett said, there's no evidence whatsoever. Like I just did a quick search for Jersey Devil footprints, just like image search. And like one of the first images that shows up is like a guy wearing like big monster feet. Another one is what is clearly a squirrel in snow, squirrel tracks. One that's like a moose. I mean, these are easily identifiable things. And you think if there was any sort of credible evidence or even questionable evidence, it would be a little higher up in the search than that. So that plus the Ben Franklin angle, which really seems to undercut a lot of the earlier stories, and even some of the later stories where it's just like, oh, I totally shot it with a cannonball, and there's absolutely nothing to show for it. It's because you didn't hit anything. I got 0 on this one. I mean, it's such an outlandish sounding thing. It's got a horse's head, it's got bat wings, it's got a snake's tail, it's got claws and deer legs. It's just a mishmash amalgamation of nonsense with no evidence, with no no recent accounts that seem it to hold water at all.
I just sent a video over to you.
Okay, let me take a quick look at that before I finish my thoughts. But also the huge gaps between sightings. I mean, a lot of time goes on between, but hang on a second.
Brett's face as he watched that. He's 7 years old.
Oh man, I mean, did I say 0? I meant 10 based on that YouTube video that you just sent me. No, this is
replay that one.
It's a neat little story or set of stories because there's so many different accounts of it and like where it came from, what it is, but it's not real. It's not. I mean, any sightings were probably large birds, if they were anything at all. So yeah, I 0 out of 10. This thing does not exist.
0 out of 10. You dog, you. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm definitely on the more skeptical side of this particular creature. Brett brought up that large populations have seen it in various places, so that is kind of interesting to think that they saw something, presumably. Like that almost harkens more to like aliens we looked at in a past episode, where like a larger population seemed to have had this experience at the same time, as opposed to like random hunter dude who's in the woods with his skull in his back pocket and happens to see Bigfoot or something. That's right, that was a chewing tobacco reference in 2022. But the gaps between the years on this one seem a little circumspect to me, unless somebody could like prove that it's like an iteration, like maybe it comes back every 37 years or something. That would be kind of interesting if somebody could put that together as a theory.
Lives in a sewer with balloons.
Yeah, something like that. But I just have a hard time with this one. I do think it's cool that this one has a legend that goes back so far, and supposedly is tied into like a birth, which is kind of unique as well. Like nobody's claiming Bigfoot was, coming out of a lady's womb, for example. But
I hope no one's claiming that.
well, I mean, but so I have to go on the lower side on this one as well. I'm thinking maybe like I mean, could it have been its own creature? I don't think there is a creature now. Let's start with that, I guess. But could there have been a creature that was just like its own unique thing, especially as far back as 1909 or even, 1700s? I mean, that opens up the possibility that there could have been something else out there that maybe through time or human encroachment on environment or whatever reason it has changed. But I still have to go pretty low on this. I'm going to give this a 2. I'm going to say a 2 on this one. Just don't see the proof on this one.
Okay. Fairly well, a bit of a range, but in general, I think we all have kind of a similar consensus on this one. A cool story, kind of creepy. Definitely, something you could look more into if you're looking for some chills on this wonderful Spooktober month that we're in the middle of.
Yeah, fun one for Halloween.
Yeah,
Definitely. As far as cryptids go, it's one of the ones that are more frightening for sure.
Yeah, in terms of appearance, I mean, it screams, bloody murder. It can fly. It's got claws. It'll eat your pets. Yeah, it's something that's just kind of out there. The stories, painted something that's out there. You never know when it's going to show up or what it's going to do. So, I mean, in terms of fodder for stories, it's great. It's fine. But in terms of a real thing, yeah. So that said, I think we're about wrapped up on this. So I hope you've enjoyed. And unless there's any closing thoughts, we can lead off with our traditional song.
No, it's a fun one. I think I'm looking forward to the next couple here. As we were talking before the podcast, just like whittling down scary movies and scary video games is going to be a challenge. So we'll see where we end up with those.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So next week, I believe, is top 10 scary movies.
I don't remember what order they are. Whatever order we want to do them in.
Either way, a lot more scares and spooky things coming up. So stay tuned. Until then, this has been Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.